Still far from perfect, but certainly much, much better than we've seen the Kraken play in the last couple of games. No, they don't end up getting the win in the final home game of this first home stretch, but they do play a good Blues team with a lot of rest, really tight, and honestly, probably even looked like the better team over the course of the entire game. And they at least come out with 1 point. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where, again, the Seattle Kraken do end up falling in the third game of the homestand, 4-3 to the St. Louis Blues, coming out with that 1 point from the overtime loss. And again, while they don't get a win at home, it is a drastic improvement over the last two games against Vegas and Carolina, and a step much more in the direction of the team that we saw in the two games in SoCal to start the season. Also worth mentioning before we dive right into it, I'm sorry if my voice sounds weird in this one, or there's not quite as much energy as maybe you're used to, but I don't know whether it's I got sick suddenly, or if the bad smoke here in the Seattle area is just getting to me, which could definitely be a possibility considering allergies and all that stuff. We're working our way through this one. It might be a bit on the shorter end because of it, but I figured since the Kraken actually tried in this game, I might as well put in an effort myself to make this video even if it isn't perfect. Also, as far as the Kraken lineup is concerned, Jones is back in net for this one as he and Grubauer continue to alternate games. But the Kraken, I think, finally getting to that goaltender tandem that they wanted to do last year but never really were able to, because of the staggered injuries and illnesses that both Drieger and Grubauer had over the course of last season. How this ends up panning out, if they keep going this way, or if they're just testing the water to see who should be the main starter, we'll find out as the season goes along. But neither goalie has really stood out over the other to this point. Though, with that having been said, the Kraken needed to play much better defensively than they did against either Vegas or Carolina if they really wanted it to matter who was in net in the first place. And they certainly did, at least in this game. As far as the guys in front of Jones, there were a couple of changes. Both Kuhlman and Donato come back up into the lineup, with Sprong and Geekie going to the bench for this one, which does mean that for the first time in his career, Shane Wright gets back-to-back starts, and again ended the game somewhere around 6.5 to 7 minutes in ice time. As for the game itself, well, first off, it's already off to a better start right out of the gates than either of the two previous games, as we get through the first 5 minutes of it without the Kraken being down 1 or 2 to nothing. That having been said, this is where the far from perfect still comes in, as the Kraken did have to kill off one Blues penalty in that time frame, and we're already halfway through killing off a second. The first one, the Blues were in the offensive zone for pretty much the entire time. Fortunately, Seattle was able to keep them to the outside, and again, Jones in net was making the difference, making a couple pretty big saves. And then with the second Blues power play that starts right around that 5-minute mark, it's not so much how the Kraken end up killing it off as it is how they get there in the first place, which all starts after they kill the first penalty. The Kraken are able to push back down to the other end of the ice, and it's Shane Wright with the puck down along the boards in the corner in the offensive zone, and he gets absolutely plastered into the boards and goes down to the ice hard from a hit by Barbashev, which immediately draws a reaction from Donato, who was the next one there. He goes right after Barbashev, and although there weren't necessarily a lot of punches thrown, there definitely was some wrestling, and the two of them go to the ice behind the Blues net. This does draw a double minor for Donato for instigating the fight, and also a single minor for Barbashev for, I guess, being a part of it. Either way, the Blues end up with a power play out of it, and while that certainly doesn't sound ideal for Donato to just put the Blues on the power play because he's going to the defense of a teammate, I mean, if you're new to hockey, I get it, and yes, technically speaking, it wouldn't be ideal to send a team like the Blues, especially to the power play, but this is one of those things that just, it's kind of the way hockey is. Now, is it maybe a bit dumb that fighting is enough a part of hockey culture that Donato taking a fight here and putting his team at a man disadvantage for 2 minutes is probably the better thing in the long run, even though it comes after his teammate just took a clean hit along the boards, even if it's a big one? Yeah, you can make that argument, but again, that's just kind of part of hockey, especially when the player that takes that big hit is a star top draft pick teenager that's just playing his first games in the NHL. And even aside from what it could do for Wright's confidence to see his teammates come to his defense like that, also probably just a good career move long-term for Donato, who did just get scratched in the last game and spent some time in and out of the lineup last year as well. To go to a defense of a key star player for the future like that is the type of move that might earn him a more consistent spot in the starting lineup. Again, whether or not that makes any kind of logical sense or not. And actually, while we're on the subject of things happening to boost Shane Wright's confidence after taking his first big NHL hit here, which fortunately he was able to bounce back up from just fine, after the power play for the Blues is over and all that, the next shift that Shane Wright gets, on either side of him, the Kraken, or I should say Hackstall, puts Burakovsky and Bjorkstrand, two of the better scorers that the Kraken have, which ended up in a shift that almost scored a couple of times, getting Wright either his first point or potentially his first goal. Now, it doesn't end up getting the Kraken on the board, but still it was good to see Hackstall give that boost of confidence to him and just get him back out on the ice quickly rather than letting him sit on the bench and think about that hit that he took. And yes, I know not everyone's the biggest Hackstall fan, and there have been some issues over the last year plus a few games now, but credit where it's due, I think he did the right thing here. Back to the game, though, although again, I do think Donato did the right thing here coming to Shane Wright's defense, and it's something you'd like to see Donato do, or really anybody on the Kraken for that matter. Donato just happened to be the one there. We kind of see it later in the game as Borgen goes to the defense of Jones. But again, it does put the Kraken at a man disadvantage against a team that had one of the best power plays in the entire NHL last season. If not the best, no, I think the Leafs still had the best, but the Blues had one of the better power plays with two really good units that can score on you. Fortunately, the Kraken are able to kill off this second penalty and actually even do a better job of it than the first one. However, just as McCann is getting back out on the ice, who was serving the first of the two double minors that Donato was given for the fight, just as McCann is able to get back into the play, and he was able to get established in the play, still it's Kyrou floating around with the puck by the faceoff dot. He just fires off a shot, and it beats Jones clean under his glove hand to give the Blues the 1-0 lead. This is one I think you would like to see Jones make a stop on. I'm pretty sure he had a relatively clean look. Ultimately, I mean, I'm no goalie coach or anything like that. I've never played goalie, but it looks a bit like Jones kind of just got lazy with his glove hand here and how he's approaching a potential Kyrou shot. I don't know if that's what Kyrou saw, but again, he beats Jones there just under the glove hand over the pad and into the back of the net. Fortunately, though, the Blues aren't able to build any momentum off of this ice-breaking goal, and in fact, it's the Kraken who really start to ramp up the pressure down at the other end of the ice with a couple of very good shifts, one of them being that Shane Wright shift with Bjorkstrand and Burakovsky that we just talked about. And although the initial few pushes by the Kraken don't end up getting on the board, as they get back into the offensive zone after the Blues were able to kind of quell the Kraken momentum for a little bit, the Kraken are able to work the puck back into the offensive zone and in around behind the Blues net. It's Bjorkstrand from one side of the net over to Wenberg still behind the net on the other side. He gets a pass up to a pinching Borgen. Borgen fires off a shot and he scores to tie up the game at 1. Excuse me. That's the smoke I was telling you about, but Borgen ties up the game at 1. And honestly, I don't know how this puck gets through Binnington, but it seemed to get through him pretty clean. I guess it must have gone through his 5-hole. Didn't really seem like there was enough space there, but either way, Borgen just fired off the shot, and sometimes when you fire off shots, good things happen. And so now, not only have the Kraken tied things up, but they have all the momentum going in their direction. And as long as they can keep that up, or at the very least not give up a quick response goal or two like they did in the Carolina game when they got back into that one with a 2-1 score, then things should be perfectly... Oh, no. Oh, you've got to be... Really? Again? Right off the faceoff, or actually not right after the faceoff. The Kraken actually get a pretty good scoring chance right after the faceoff, but still, just over a minute after the Borgen goal, there's a miscommunication behind the Kraken net between Jones and Dunn that turns into a turnover. The Blues get the puck out from behind the net, out in front. Jones scrambles out in front, but the pass goes over to Shen, who has then a wide open net as Jones tried to respond to the first pass, not the second one. Fortunately, Shen whiffs on his first chance, and Larsson's able to clear it. Or almost cleared anyway, as Shen's second whack at the puck takes it off of Larsson's stick and puts it behind him into the Kraken net to get that quick response goal and the lead back for St. Louis. Just like the last game. Okay, not just like the last game. In the last game, the Kraken gave up 2 quick response goals, so as long as they... I don't even know why I said anything. 2 freaking games in a row. This time, it is right off the ensuing faceoff that the Kraken allow an odd man chance right down their throat, right back down towards Jones. It's Shen who has the puck at first down along the boards, and he does have Larsson in front of him, so at least he's defended, but he gets a crossing pass out into the crease to a wide open Justin Falk, who somehow just got past Dunn, who I guess completely forgot about him, and he's able to beat Jones, bar down, or I don't know, he put it into the top of the net. Either way, it's a point for the Blues, and just like that, what was once a 1-1 game, just over a minute later, is now a 3-1 game St. Louis advantage. And once again, for now the second game in a row, the Kraken allow not one, but two quick response goals just over a minute after getting their first one of the game. At this point, Hackstall does call the timeout to allow the Kraken to regroup and I guess not give up a third goal in a few seconds, which, as far as that's concerned, they don't give up another goal here in the first period, which is good, but the Blues do get the better of the offensive zone time throughout the rest of the first, even though the Kraken get a bit of a push after the timeout is taken. They still end up having to kill off another Blues penalty at the end of the period, which is a key kill because you don't want to be down 4-1 going into the first. Still, 3-1 is far from ideal. Fortunately, I guess, for the Kraken, when they do allow the Blues to kind of start running away with this game with those two quick response goals in the first, unlike the game against Carolina where it came late in the second, it is still midway through the first, and by the end of the first, they still have two full periods to try to work their way back into this game, where in the Carolina one, not only were they down 4-1 rather than 3-1, they just had the one period. That having been said, it would only take the Kraken just the one period to get back in this game, as by the end of two, it was tied 3-3. And even outside of the fact that it was a good period for the Kraken because they get the two unanswered goals to tie the game, completing the comeback, it was also just a great period of hockey in general. Honestly, even especially if you were a fan of some other team without a rooting interest in this game, it was back and forth with good chances at either end of the ice. Jones making some good saves, Binnington making a couple of highlight saves, one absolutely robbing Beniers, and another one just, I mean, if the Beniers one was a robbery, I don't know what you would call what he did to Soucy a little bit later on in the period. But even with Binnington having a pretty good night in net, the Kraken just wouldn't go away. And eventually, just past the halfway point of the second period, a turnover in the Kraken defensive zone gets the puck to Tanev, who finds a wide-open Donato cheating down ice, and he gets on a completely free breakaway. Makes maybe a few too many moves as he gets up towards the net one-on-one versus Binnington, eventually going for the forehand wrap-around chance trying to get it around Binnington's toe and into the net, which he just isn't quite able to do, as Binnington gets both legs to the post. However, the puck isn't frozen under Binnington's pads, and without a whistle, Donato just keeps poking and prying at it until he hears a whistle, which he never does, eventually pushing Binnington away from the puck, and Donato's able to find that puck and put it into the net to get the Kraken to within one. Now, I do have to admit that if I was a Blues fan, I'd probably be a bit annoyed at this goal and the fact that there wasn't a whistle when it looked like the puck was frozen under Binnington's pads, and that they allowed Donato to just keep whacking away at it until it went in. But there was also a ref right there behind the net that had a clear view of the entire thing, and I think could see that the puck was loose between Binnington's pads and that he didn't actually have it frozen, which is why there's no whistle, and why Donato was allowed to keep poking and prying at it until eventually he gets the puck in. Either way, as a Kraken fan, I loved it. And also, certainly worth mentioning on this Donato goal, Donato, by the way, who always seems to score in his first game back after having been benched for a game or two, but regardless, that's not what I was talking about. Although it's not a no-look pass, it's not even a primary assist, and we didn't even find out that the point was added to this Donato goal until the start of the third period. As a late addition to this Donato goal, there is a secondary assist to Tanev's primary. And that would go to Shane Wright, getting his first ever point in the NHL with the secondary assist here. And sure, to be fair, if we're being honest, it might have been a bit of a gift of an assist, and certainly was a bit of a soft assist that Wright gets here, as the puck kind of just goes off of his stick on its way through the defensive zone to Tanev on the other side. Still, it hit his stick, then went to Tanev, who got it to Donato, who scored, so it's a legitimate assist, just maybe not the highlight reel one. That having been said, Wright was robbed of a couple of points, an assist and a goal later in the game, so I think it's only fair that he gets his first point in this game, even if it doesn't come on the best play that he had in the game. And finally, with this goal on top of all that, there is also one other fun fact about it that I'm going to save until the end of the video. You might already know about it if you follow me during the games on Twitter, but I figure we had some fun facts after the first couple of games, and then the last two games weren't really fun, so we skipped it there. Yeah, what the heck. We'll stick around to the end and we'll get that. Following Donato's breakaway stubborn goal here to get the Kraken to within one, Seattle isn't really able to build any momentum off of that, and neither are the Blues, as we go back to a second period that once again was pretty back and forth the entire way. Eventually, though, as we get towards the end of the period, it is Seattle who gets at least a little bit of sustained momentum. However, it isn't any of that sustained momentum that ends up getting them back on the board again. Instead, it's a random shot from Larson up by the blue line in the corner of the offensive zone that he just kind of fires off on net, because what the heck? I mean, For one, that's kind of what we've been asking the Kraken to do, is just shoot the puck when they have the chances to. And although this was a very low percentage shot that Larson takes here, when you shoot the puck, sometimes good things happen, and that's just what happens here, as Larson's shot, which Binnington reads all the way, is deflected in front of Binnington by Krug and goes into the Blues net. It's pretty much an own goal, as Krug deflects it off the heel of his stick, and Binnington can't make the adjustment. Krug, quite unhappily, breaks his stick on the post after the play. Still, though, the Kraken will happily take it, as they have a good chuckle, do the high fives along the line, and go to the locker room a little bit later with the game tied at 3. Alright, so my voice is really starting to go now, so I'm going to try and get through the rest of this game pretty quick here. I mean, the Kraken don't score again in it, and we already know they lose 4-3 in overtime, so there's not a lot of scoring left. But as we move into the third period, unlike the second, the third period was pretty much dominated, I thought, start to finish by the Kraken. There's a couple places in here, especially towards the end of the third period, where the Blues do get a little bit of momentum, and the momentum that they got towards the end of the third, I really thought was going to turn into a goal, because that just kind of felt like the way this homestand was going, where the Kraken get a lot of momentum, they get things going, and as soon as they get anything going, they just slapped across the face and told no. But fortunately, they do get the game to overtime. Still, as a part of all of that pressure, like I said earlier, Shane Wright had a couple of one really good shift where he got 2 very good scoring opportunities. First, where he made a beautiful backhanded feed out from behind the net out in front that Binnington made a nice save on the shot. And then back out in front of the net himself, he got a good feed from behind it that he just put off the post. It beat Binnington, but again, just an inch or two away from his first NHL goal, which, given that it would have been a game or a lead-taking goal midway through the third, that building would have absolutely erupted. Also, like I mentioned earlier, way towards the beginning of the video, there was one point here midway through the third where Jones got run a bit by the Blues, and Borgen immediately went to his defense and got in another kind of more of a scrum than a fight behind the net that resulted this time in 3 calls, 2 traded roughings, and an added penalty, but the added penalty this time was for goaltender interference to the Blues, so the Kraken got a power play, but the Blues also have a pretty good penalty kill, and nothing really came of that power play for Seattle. And of course, eventually we get to overtime, where the Kraken had possession for most of the overtime and got the first couple of chances on net and one shot that Binnington was able to save. Unfortunately, another kind of miscommunication led to a puck out in front of the Kraken net that they weren't able to get a shot off from, even though I think if he had been able to get a shot, it probably would have gone in. Instead, it was passed back out to a wide open, once again, Justin Falk. I mean, it's 3-on-3, so everyone's pretty wide open. Still, Falk was able to take his time, pick his spot, and his shot goes top corner and in to give the Blues the win. As for the Kraken 3 stars of the game, without too much explanation, because I just don't have the voice for it at this point, the first star is going to be Ryan Donato. Obviously has the goal, and honestly just had a really good game. He doesn't have a ton of time on ice, but made the most of the time that he was on the ice. Second star, oh, what the heck, I'll give it to Shane Wright. I was probably going to make him third star, but he gets his first NHL point, and again, only about 6.5 minutes of time on ice, so actually a little bit less than what he had against Carolina, but was able to get a lot more consistent shifts, unlike Carolina, where there were so many penalties that they just couldn't consistently get him out on the ice. I don't know if it was that consistency or just the fact that it's his third game, but it really was noticeable, the improvements that he's been making game to game, and especially from the Carolina game to this one, which could be that maybe that first big hit that he took just was like, oh, I mean, if I can survive that, I can survive anything, or getting that first NHL point just kind of takes that off of your back a bit. Still, the first goal is there, but yeah, Wright, especially in the third period, looked considerably better than we've seen him really at all to this point, even through preseason. As far as the third star for the Kraken, I don't know that there was really one other guy that stood out above everyone else necessarily, or at least not drastically so. Tanev, again, had a very good game and was a difference maker out on the ice, obviously getting the assist on the Donato goal, but also some big hits along the boards. Beniers, again, just looks like the best player out on the ice for the Kraken whenever he has the puck, especially. But I think I'm going to give the third star to Alex Wemberg, who had also a very good game for the Kraken. Only gets onto the score sheet with an assist on that first goal for Borgen, but had some other chances to get on the score sheet as well, and would have if Binnington hadn't been making some pretty nice saves in net. And come to think of it, I also probably could have given it to either Larson or Borgen, who both scored goals. Larson, now with 2 goals on the season already, tied for the team lead in goals scored after a career-high 8 goals last season. So there you go. Who would have guessed? Adam Larson, offensive extraordinaire from the blue line. Oh, and before we close things out, as far as that fun fact that I mentioned on the Donato goal, with that goal and Shane Wright getting his first NHL point with the assist on the goal, Donato now has the goal scored for the first point in both the careers of Shane Wright and Matty Beniers, as he was the one that scored on Beniers' no-look pass in Calgary in his first game last season. So, kind of a fun connection there between Beniers and Wright, outside of being the two high first-round picks in franchise history. With that, though, because my voice really could use some recovery time before Friday's game against the Avalanche, and not to mention that we're probably going to have a reverse retro video, at least a short one here, coming up soon, with that being released by the Kraken. We have reached the end of this one, I think, so let me know down in the comment section what you thought of this game for the Kraken. Clearly an improvement for the team, as well as Shane Wright from the last two games. I mean, Shane Wright only from the last game, but anyway, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below to help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. Until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, go Kraken!